While certainly DC's big announcement of their new Batman writer seemed to take all the headlines, Marvel also announced a new Captain America writer. Not quite as big a character, obviously, as Batman, but still very, very important. They happen to be like best friends, the writer on Batman and Captain America, which is interesting. Some of you may be noticing like the happy birthday stuff in the decorations. Yes, in fact, today was my birthday. But today, while you're watching this, is not my birthday because I recorded this on my birthday, but it's going to be coming out a few days later. So you don't need to wish me happy birthday, but I do appreciate any of the good vibes that you could send me out there as I'm getting a little bit closer to 50. Getting a little bit older out there. But this is not about my birthday. This is about a new Captain America writer. And if you're a Captain America fan, you have not gotten serviced well in a very, very long time. I think everyone basically agrees that the last really good, or basically even good Captain America run that we got was Ed Brubaker. That was a long time ago. We're coming up on like 20 years. Maybe even it is 20 years at this point. But we suffered through, what was it, Mark Waid, then Ta-Nehisi Coates, then the Hive Mind, Colin Kelly and Jackson Lanzig. We got JMS most recently. None of it has really worked out. And this time they're putting a Canadian on the book. I don't know if this is the right choice. I'm very conflicted about it, but let's get to the details. Marvel Comics has revealed Chip Zdarsky and Valerio Schiti are taking over Captain America in July with a fresh #1 issue to launch on July 2nd. In time for the 4th of July, the story sees Captain America tasked with infiltrating Latveria in a post-World War II era leading to his previously untold first encounter with Dr. Doom. Zdarsky stated, "We're exploring Cap's early days in the modern era with a twist that I think is going to really surprise readers. I'm pretty excited to get this out in the world, especially with Valerio and Frank's amazing art." Valerio Schiti is, in fact, a pretty good artist. I wouldn't say like an A-lister, but certainly a very serviceable hand on ongoing series. We don't have a lot of those, especially at Marvel these days. One of the better arts they got, so they put somebody with some chops on there when it comes to art. Chip Zdarsky is like a love-hate relationship with me these days. There are some things that he's done. I really like the first half of his Daredevil run. I really like the second 2/3 of his Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man run. I like the first arc of his Batman. But the rest of his Batman was really, really awful. The second half of his Daredevil, while not that bad, wasn't very good either. And he's had some misses along the way. But he's had some hits. You know, I got to think about Invaders. And that's probably the last really good depiction that we've gotten of Steve Rogers as Captain America in a starring role in a comic book. Like in the last 10 years, that's the best one. And Chip Zdarsky did that. And that was a throwback version of Captain America teaming up with Namor in the original Human Torch. And it's really good. If you haven't checked it out, highly suggest everyone go read Chip Zdarsky's Invaders. Most recently, the best thing he did was Avengers Twilight, which was like a Kingdom Come-esque story about the Avengers, obviously the Marvel Universe, and Captain America is the star, and he's pretty good, even in the future there. And I kind of liked it. I liked what he did with him there. Not nearly as good as Kingdom Come, but certainly a cool story. But if you go back and you look at the second half and even parts of the first half of that Daredevil run, Chip on an ongoing series has a tendency to break down and get real mad at capitalism, you know, and rich people. And certainly in the last story arc of his Batman run, it evolved into rich man bad, Russia disinformation hoax and stuff like that. It'll be kind of weird. So I do think while Chip Zdarsky is certainly very, very capable of writing a very classic, awesome version of Captain America and sending him on adventures, with given too much time, and this isn't ongoing, that he will devolve into his I don't really like America stuff, which kind of makes sense because he is Canadian. There's a lot of stuff going around right now with Canadian American politics. Me personally, I love Canadians. I don't know why we would want Canada to be a state, but okay, like it's not certainly something that I'm personally championing, but it seems to have caused a bit of discourse in there where Canadians aren't exactly happy with America. And I wonder if Chip Zdarsky could end up taking that out on Captain America, which is essentially what Ta-Nehisi Coates did with the character, which was essentially what Colin Kelly and Jackson Lanzig did with the character, where they didn't really portray him as Captain America. They portrayed him more as a mouthpiece for their own personal feelings about what's going on. And nobody wants to read that because it's boring, and quite frankly, I don't care what Chip Zdarsky thinks about America. He can put it up on his Twitter, he can put it up on his Bluesky, he can put it up on his Substack, but I don't want to pay for it. And I don't think most Captain America fans would have paid for that either. I think they want to see Captain America in adventures having a good time. The problem with Captain America is you do have to include some of these elements in there or it would feel kind of weird. Like you do have to have some of it in there. But the question is, can Chip Zdarsky do that well or with any type of subtlety? I have a feeling he can't, especially with the modern stuff. The series will feature insights into Captain America's role and legacy as he learns just how much the world has changed in his absence. This top secret conflict will come back to haunt all involved when the series progresses into present day storylines. In addition, fans can look forward to Cap suiting up in an all-new stealth uniform and leading an all-new group of Howling Commandos. I don't really care about Howling Commandos, like a new group of Howling Commandos. That's not a sell for me. They got stealth suits, whatever. So the thing that initially had me excited was Chip Zdarsky doing an old-school version of Captain America, which is essentially what JMS did. He initially was showing him, back during World War II. It kind of meandered and wasn't interesting because he wasn't really doing much with him. But I imagine Chip Zdarsky was going to do something in the vein of the Invaders, which was really, really good. But now that you start getting the details, you're like, oh no, it's not just like the first mission to introduce like his version of Captain America. He's going to introduce new elements that are going to completely change the way we feel about Captain America's origins and where it came from and make him question himself and all that kind of stuff. And quite frankly, I know that this stuff works. Some writers have done it very, very successfully. Captain America has a very good example of that, Ed Brubaker, with The Winter Soldier, where you go back, take original elements, change them to make them mean something new, and it adds a new level of vibrance to the story. But most modern writers can't really do that, and I'm so tired of them going back and tinkering with the past so they can tell the story in the future that they think makes sense. Because the past of Captain America and his history doesn't make sense for what they want to say, so they have to go change that so the story in modern times will make sense, rather than crafting a story that makes sense for the character all along. You get what I'm saying? It gets very, very frustrating. It's the Tom Taylor effect. It's the Jason Aaron effect. It's the Tom King effect, where you always have to go back to the beginning and start changing stuff, not a little bit, but pretty fucking dramatically, just so you can tell the story that you wish you would be able to tell with the character, rather than crafting a story and a narrative that really makes sense for the character as is. You don't need to go back and fix Joe Simon and Jack Kirby's work. You don't need to go back and fix Bob Kane and Bill Finger's work. You don't need to go back and fix Stan Lee and Steve Ditko's work. They got it right the first time, and you don't need to change the character. We've already got an origin. We've got the original years of the character, and just move on. I'm so tired of looking back, and it gets very, very redundant when they continuously do the exact same thing essentially every single time. The opening arc of their game-changing new run takes place in a rarely explored time period after the World War II hero emerged from the frozen, suspended animation, but before he joined the Avengers. Declassifying Steve Rogers' first mission after re-enlisting in the U.S. Army, the story sees Captain America tasked with infiltrating Latveria, leading to his previously untold first encounter with Dr. Doom, packed with bold, relevant insights into Captain America's role and legacy as he learns how much the world has changed in his absence. That's not really an interesting story at this point because we're so far away from World War II, it's not even funny. I don't want to see how his legacy and role changed, from the time that he froze in the Golden Age and then came back out of it in the Silver Age. Like, that's not interesting. But then again, I do have to admit, Chip Zdarsky did do a good job with a Golden Age, Silver Age-esque version of Captain America and the Invaders. And I'm quite comfortable with him doing that, but knowing that he's going to go and change those times so he can tell a more modern story makes me very, very apprehensive that he is going to take Captain America and bastardize the character for his own platform, his own political ideas and all that stuff, and not really take into consideration what Captain America is, what he stands for, what the history of the character is. Like, I don't want to read, or certainly pay to read, about Chip Zdarsky's feelings on tariffs. I don't really want to read about Chip Zdarsky's feelings regarding illegal immigration. I don't really care what Chip Zdarsky thinks about the war in Ukraine when it comes to his own personal feelings. Now, I would love to see what Chip Zdarsky thinks Captain America feels about it, if he wants to incorporate some of those elements into the Captain America series, but that it actually makes sense for the character and the history and where he comes from, but also not beating us over the head with it and making it so full of current events that it's not really fun. These do need to be escapism, but I do understand it is Captain America, and he should at least acknowledge some of the stuff going on there. So I think this is probably a really bad choice, because I did see the second half of Daredevil. I did see the second half of Batman. This has much more in common with Daredevil and Batman than it has to do with the Invaders, a maxi series. This has much more in common with Daredevil and Batman than it has to do with Avengers Twilight, a mini series. This is long form storytelling. It's supposed to be episodic and ongoing. And we've seen in the past, Chip Zdarsky cannot help but to start getting into those and kind of becoming obsessed with them and using the character to essentially echo his own personal sentiments about it, rather than actually hearing the voice of the character. That was basically his downfall on the second half of the Daredevil run, and was certainly his downfall the last story arc with Batman, but he'd already broken it by then anyway, so most people probably didn't even notice it. So we'll see. Chip Zdarsky has done very good things in the past. I was very, very excited about his inclusion on Batman. I ended up being so wrong about that. You know, I feel like I need to apologize to people, because they might have gone out there and decided to pick up Batman because Chip Zdarsky was on it. Because I said, hey, this guy's a good writer. It ended up absolutely blowing up in my face like a stick of Acme Dynamite. But this feels like probably the wrong choice and the wrong marriage of creator and character. Although I have to firmly admit, the last time we saw a good version of Captain America was, in fact, Chip Zdarsky on Invaders. So it gets a little confusing, but I believe this will not go well. If you enjoy these types of conversations and this kind of content covering the news, reviews, commentary on the comic book industry, and you would like to support Thinking Critical YouTube, the best place to do that is Thinking Critical Patreon. There's a link in the video description. There's also a little button right here. You come visit us. You see the tiers that we have, the podcast available. If you'd like to help us and keep the mission moving forward and keep the lights on, I definitely hope you come visit us and consider joining the family.